Welcome to the first BirdBox Film Club in partnership with myself, Bresh, and Avisha, who make up Big Picture Film Club. So what we aim to sort of discuss every month is really selecting films from BirdBox's really award-winning catalog and kind of picking out films and having conversations with, the cast, the crew, like we have today, and yourselves, the audience, and really having this film club as an extension of the BirdBox platform. And if you do have any questions, make sure you leave your questions in the Q&A and we'll get back to those at the end. And thank you to our guests today.
Cool. So nodding on to BirdBox's launch for the new short film channel, we're kicking things off and we're lucky to have the team behind The Running Man. It's a 90s rave influenced short film which premiered at Raindance Film Festival, and we're very excited to be joined by our guests, producer Sadie Frost, director Chris Turner, writer Johnny Cooke, and lead actor Raff Law. So I think we kind of touched on some points on the film just before we started, and what I wanted to get into is where the inspiration for the story came about. We were just talking about the rave scene and like you touched on the Sin story that's just out now. So what kind of inspired the story and how it came into fruition as a short film?
Well, for one, I kind of was house sharing with Johnny Cooke, and he's got the most amazing imagination. And we were always talking about collaborating. And he came up with this idea. In fact, Johnny would kind of corner me and go, I've got this idea, I've got that idea. And then he came up with this idea and I was like, this could be great. And I really wanted to work with him. And then we thought we needed a great director, and we asked Chris if he liked the script when Johnny had written it, and then we needed to get a cast, and we auditioned loads of young actors, and we cast Raff because he was the perfect choice for Fred. But Johnny, what was your inspiration?
We were talking about doing something music based, and it was definitely going to have Raff in it. So I had Raff as kind of my muse. So Fred was kind of created for Raff essentially. And I thought, what era of music was the most sort of underrepresented? Well, the one that really affected me when I was just a young teenager was the early 90s, the rave era. I think it was the last great youth subculture. It was a crazy time. It was difficult to understand, although I know kids trying to recreate the rave scene at the moment. I've no idea if it's anything like what it was, but it really was about solidarity and coming together, it's unity, and you would get creeds and cultures in the same room, literally hugging, like kissing each other and gurning with their eyes rolling. And so anyway, I thought of the image of these four guys that were hugging at the start of the film, and then I thought, all great stories need conflict and change, and I thought, what would be the opposite image to that? In total ecstasy, in love with your friends, like we all are when we're teenagers. And it was the same four best mates lying in a pool of blood.
Did you know how they would get there? Did you know what that conflict would be? You just knew that there would be a conflict.
Sorry?
You just knew that there would be some sort of conflict to show that.
Yes, I'd recently seen a documentary on a drug trial that went wrong, but in this case I think these people's heads expanded and nearly exploded, but which sounds completely untrue, but it's apparently real. Obviously I sort of flipped that. I thought it would be good because when you're a young sort of raver in the 90s, and in fact back then people did do drug trials to make a bit of extra cash, so it was a thing. And they can go wrong, and I thought, what great place for something terrible to go wrong terribly in 24 hours. I mean, I wanted to make it condensed, confined. We didn't have a budget for a great big sweeping changing of sets or anything. So yeah, I mean, amongst all that is the answer to your question.
I wanted to again kind of touch on the idea of the rave culture and really creating the soundscape for the film. I really love the aesthetics, from the Elise and Adidas bucket hats to the raver with the multicolored bracelets.
Yeah, the glow sticks.
Yeah. And yeah, it was just kind of, if you could sort of take me into how the actual sound was made, and like what music artists sort of like influenced the sound of the film.
Well, I'll start on this and then I'll just hand to Chris. It was really, really important that we were authentic. I mean, it was kind of crucial for me right from the start. I actually named tunes that we wanted to be played in the script. Then got in touch with these long since unheard of old DJs that used to put out white labels, and some of them were kind enough to let us use their music in the original version. And then there was a licensing thing, and Chris turned out to have a great contact in a guy called High Contrast, and Chris will tell you about him, but he took it over and did a most incredible job. Like he put a score together that you wouldn't know wasn't from that era, and I think maybe even the film's better for it.
Yeah, it kind of went in 3 stages. The first was Johnny had his playlist, and I was kind of that kind of age in the rave sort of scene, but I wasn't massively into it. I liked some of the bands I liked. There was a few that I loved, like Alternate, who were from where I was from, and so sort of even if you weren't super into rave, it was still part of your kind of realm of experience. But so the first stage of it was when Raff and all the guys and everyone, when we shot the rave, Johnny just DJ'd and played all that sort of stuff like T22 and Prodigy and everything. So we had that to go to, and it pretty much all uses the same tempo. So we knew that once we got into the edit, we could stick something else on it and it would still fit. So there was that stage of it. Then we had the edit where, like Johnny says, we got I think there was about 5 or 6 artists. We used their original kind of white labels and original releases, and they all let us use the licensing for like a festival licensing run. And then once it became excuse me, that had to have a sort of a wider release from that, it was easier to then just get somebody to recreate the music. But we didn't want to just go to someone who would just copy it, but it had to be cut to the same beats, otherwise we'd have to re-edit the whole thing and everything. So yeah, High Contrast he's a drum and bass producer, but he loves that kind of aesthetic. He's got one of the original Prodigy synths from the 90s and everything. He's super.
It reminded me of like early Prodigy.
Yeah, so I think the synth is actually called Prodigy. I think that's where they got their name. I think it was that way around. But Lincoln, who's High Contrast, he basically sort of did something in the same kind of vein for every key track and rebuilt it. But a lot of the stuff is kind of the same, because it's like a load of those tracks use the Amen break and a lot of the same samples. So he kind of rebuilt it in a way that you wouldn't really tell it was hugely different. He just sort of brought his own thing to it. But and it meant that the whole thing is now by him, apart from the track at the end, which is by Johnny and who's a guy from the Klaxons? Jamie. So the track on the end credits is by Jamie and Johnny. But yeah, everything else is High Contrast.
Awesome. And in terms of
we have a guest. We have a special guest.
I wanted to obviously the short film kind of deals with a drug trial kind of gone awry. That's the very short way of saying it. But what in the film, if you can say or you can't say, is real and what is surreal? What is it meant to be very literal, or are there elements that
I think we should let Raff answer that first, because Raff will have his own take on.
Yeah.
Me and Johnny will both have stuff that we talked about before, but Raff had to sort of interpret it. So I think it's kind of interesting to know what Raff thinks of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, what really excited me when Johnny and my mum came to me with the project at the beginning was that it was this short, but it really had a lot of depth. And I think there was a lot of interesting character development in the 20 minutes that we managed to film, where you really get to know kind of the dynamics and the friendships between the four boys. And obviously, of course, Fred Love also is kind of going through a traumatic time himself with family, and it's kind of about escape. And there's the whole element of setting it in the rave scene, I think, was really great, because that was all about people going and escaping together and having a good time. And then obviously when the drug trial happens and kind of goes wrong, I think it's kind of for people to interpret what is happening and what is in Fred's mind and if he's hallucinating. But for me, a lot of it, I mean, a lot of what you see is real. And then I think obviously when he wakes up and in his slumber, I think it is a hallucination. But I think it is definitely for the kind of whoever's viewing it to interpret it, for sure.
Yeah, that's what I mean. What about you, Johnny? I've got my take on it as well.
Well, in my thinking, it is, so the nurse was having sex with Jack, who's Fergal.
It's very
he wasn't stabbing a pencil up her nose. And when he was dancing, saying, "Note that down, Fred," he was showing off because he's a bit of a dick. And then Fred saw it as a terrible murder and legged it through the spinning corridors. The toys started talking to him. That's not real. He feels terrible guilt because he convinced his dad he wanted to be a photographer. This is very hard to pick from the short film, but his dad took on extra shifts at the chemical factory. If you watch it, you'll see these little signs and stuff. Had a terrible accident in the chemical factory, which Fred blames himself for, and then sees Steve and Fergal in the very same position as the photo that he took of his mum and his dad, and that sparks the memory of that photo. He thinks that's his dad, and then his dad disappears, and he thinks, "Steve, what the fuck have you done with my dad? Bring him back," because he misses him so much, and he hates Steve so much. His best friend, he's just about to kill him with the cricket bat, when smashes him in the head with a bottle.
For me, it was what I liked about Johnny's script was it did have all these quite bizarre. I had to read that storeroom script part quite a few times before I got what was going on, but it had all those really strange elements in it. But I think we made a decision quite early on, for all sorts of reasons, practical and everything, to not go overboard with the weirdness of it and try to keep it pretty much in the real world and keep all the things that you do see from sort of Fred's point of view quite subtle. Because there was one point when we were doing the post when we were looking at what we could play around in Flame, and the guy was making all sorts of weird stuff happen, and it was just kind of too much. It became a bit like a parody of a sort of a drug experience, where he wanted it to feel like reality, but it was just sort of bending out of Fred's reach. So I think we kept it reasonably subtle for the most part, and it is quite slapstick in a way sometimes as well. It's quite comedic. It's not full-on gore or full-on horror. So it kind of, I think we were trying to sort of walk the line of being a bit grotesque and a bit kind of trippy, but not sort of go overboard with it and kind of spoil the aesthetic. So I think it's kind of 90% in the real world, but with a good excuse to throw in some weird stuff there when Raff's obviously off his head, so.
Yeah, I think that subtlety as well was really important, because then it kind of leaves it open for the viewer to kind of try and figure out what is going on. And obviously there's bits where Fred's going in and out of hallucinating and in and out of kind of his like main conscious state. But I think yeah, and I also like the contrast throughout it of there's real nice comic moments. There's the friendship between the boys. There's the rave scene, and some really great music. And then, of course, it completely turns on his head and goes into a completely different direction. And I really like that, because I rewatched it today and really, really enjoyed rewatching it. It'd been a while for me, and I think there's a definite space for this kind of TV or film to be made, where you're kind of mixing comedy with a bit of horror, and there's also that kind of serious underlying message.
Yeah, I think so, because actually Sadie was talking about It's a Sin, and obviously it's so based on the reality of that time. And there's been, I think last year actually, when Running Man came out, there was a feature film that came out that was based in the rave scene, black and white one, was there? I can't quite remember. One came out sort of quite close to when we were finished. It wasn't all, it was set in that time. It wasn't necessarily about the scene. But what I like about Running Man is the fact that it takes that as a setting, it uses that as an aesthetic, and it uses the music and everything, but it's actually sort of a kind of a comedy horror, or, you know, it's got a weird element to it that isn't based on the music. So quite a lot of people who came to see it the first time we showed it to all cast and crew had no real idea of what it, especially the people who came to the rave, that was the first day of shooting. They watched it all thinking it was just going to be about ravers, and then it went totally off track. So
I think
didn't expect it to go that way.
Shooting that rave scene as well, that was the kind of first thing we did as the first thing we shot, and I think that was really important because we had so much fun kind of dancing and trying to like act all crazy. Then that was a real bonding moment, I think, for like, obviously it was really nice to work alongside Kelvin, who's in my band as well, and then Jack and Kerim, who I met through shooting that. We all became really close friends from it, and I think that shines through quite nicely in a lot of the scenes with the four boys. And I think shooting that rave scene before we kind of went away to Margate and shot the rest of the short was really key.
I remember as well, it was the rave scene, which was everyone got really knackered and hot and sweaty, whatever. Then the next day we all had to go to Margate, and everyone was still on a sort of a high from the rave scene. And then we sat in a freezing cold car in a car park at night till 4 a.m.
Yeah.
Really miserable. So you had this proper come down from that rave scene where everyone was going, oh, it was great fun. And then by the Saturday, or what was it, Sunday night or something, everyone was proper miserable and like freezing cold, and some scallies had turned up and start chucking stones at the car. And
I think it was really impressive though, and credit to all the cast and all the extras in that rave scene, because we really created a really great atmosphere there. And it was like no one watching that would think shot like midday in a studio in Camden, do you know what I mean? And I feel like the music really got everyone pumping, and everyone had like loads of fun, and that comes through definitely.
Yeah, it was good. And there was only like 23 people there, I think, or something, wasn't there?
Yeah, there wasn't loads of people, but I think the way we shot it and lit the room makes it look like it could be like in fabric.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
I think it's really hard, and I've been in so many scenes of this acting myself, where you shoot like a club scene or a pub scene or a crowd scene, and it never kind of relays how it actually is. And I think this is one of the first times I've seen a club scene and people dancing and like and a lot of the kind of supporting artists, and like they got it, they nailed it, and it looks so authentic, and everybody that's been watching it, and the messages I've been getting is, they're so into it because it genuinely looks like we're tapping into, the time. And even like the trailer, the bits you see, you're kind of like, oh my God, that everyone's saying it takes me back to the time. And, to get everyone just got so into it. And because sometimes it's very stilted and people are just acting, whereas people just really kind of had a good time, and it really shows.
Because nobody there had even been alive at the time of.
There's one guy who was really chewing his eyebrows. He was willing
to drink.
Yeah, you can tell he sat down. He does a very, very good little performance. You'll see.
He did.
I
can't remember. I think we've probably gone off track there, Presh. But
no, that's good. At the very start, we kind of spoke about the possibility of expanding the short film into.
I mean, for me, I as a producer, I wanted to work with Johnny. I love Chris's work, and this kind of subject matter was interesting, and I was like, sometimes it's hard to get things financed, and you make a short as a kind of pilot. We made it, and obviously we haven't been able to show it to too many people, so this is great that it's now 8 people can view it. But our intention was, and Johnny has written a kind of a longer version, is to make it into a feature, or to make it into you know, a TV series. And with what's going on now on TV, you know, we think it's the perfect time to kind of approach people and develop it. You know, we've got a great cast as well with Raff and Jack and Kelvin and Kareem, you know, and what I love is just the fact that it's really with the music as well, with Johnny's past and his music, with Raff's band, with Carl Barat, we've got Mairead and Chris, who were part of like Florence and the Machine. It just feels like a bit of a movement, and to kind of to continue it would be great.
Yeah, and also for me, when this came around, it was a really, really positive time for me. I just kind of committed and decided that I wanted to really commit to doing some work on my acting and my vocal coaching and my movement. And I started doing some auditions, and this was a really, really good opportunity at the time for me to really kind of throw myself into a role. Obviously, it wasn't a feature. It was the perfect amount of time for me to kind of feel that buzz of being on set and working and collaborating with loads of people. And now I hold it really close to me, because it was such like a kind of first bit of excitement. And I feel like my mum said, I feel like it's a really perfect time now for TV. I mean, I used to watch TV shows like Misfits and Skins, where you get these kind of culty subculture movements, and I feel like we've kind of owned into a really, really great space, and I'd love to go back and revisit working with everyone again, for sure.
It'll be fun. Will be fun. And Raff did properly, literally throw himself into. I mean, he threw himself into everything.
Yeah, I headbutted the window and I was rolling around on the floor, sweating. And I think that was like one of the last shots we had of the weekend.
When you were running around the corridor, yeah.
And I remember, I thought I'd like finished or something, and I went down with the rest of the boys, and I was kind of like relaxing a bit, and they were like, guys, one more shot, Raff, we need you to do this sprint around the whole hotel. And I was like, okay, here goes.
Dizzy as well. We spun you around, didn't we? Like, got you really dizzy, and then
made me really dizzy. Yeah,
let you off. It was great. Good fun.
Well, yeah, we're about to wrap up, so I'm just going to get into questions from the audience, if that's okay. We've got a few here. The first from anonymous attendee. How did Raff find working with his mum?
I mean, that was how did Raff find working with his mum, not how did mum find working with Raff. No, honestly, I've always really enjoyed doing little projects and collaborating with my mum, and we get on really well as mum and son, and as friends, and as working together. So yeah, it was really good, and it was a really good crew and cast. Everyone, it just felt like a really easy weekend. And yeah, I miss it really. It's weird because since we shot it at kind of mid 2019, so much has changed, and obviously a lot of us have spent a lot of time not being able to go out and see each other and work on kind of projects. So watching it back definitely took me back, and yeah, I'm excited to be able to work with my mum or anyone again.
Awesome. There's two questions here. We can kind of combine them. One says from anonymous attendee, Sadie, as a filmmaker, how important is it to make short films? And there's another question we can kind of tag onto that. Is it different shooting a short to a feature?
I mean, I've probably been involved in about 10 shorts, and I've been involved in about 4 or 5 features. And I think for me, shorts are, you know, I love kind of working with, giving people opportunities. So, you know, working with Chris, working with Johnny, for me, it's all about it. I like film because I believe in the story and working on subjects that a lot of people wouldn't maybe commit to because they wouldn't take a risk. So I kind of tell stories about things that are outside normal storytelling, you know, whether it's a film in India or a film in you know, with Ben Charles Edwards when we did Set the Thames on Fire. And I think it's about the experience of giving something opportunity that normally wouldn't get made into a feature. So with shorts, you can take risks, but there's a real art to story, to short filmmaking. So I love doing it. And also when you do a feature film, it's like raising a small child. It could take, 3 to 5 years of your life, but a short film, you can do something that's so inspiring, so exciting, with brilliant people, and you can get it made, and you can just, you're not committing huge amount of finance. So, and then something like this, which is experimental, and you make it and you think, well, actually, we should kind of push for this to be made into a feature or a TV series, because we know we've got the right chemistry of people. So, I like doing both, but there's something really rewarding about just getting something made, and you have so much more power, freedom. You don't have so many people breathing down your neck. You just go off and do it, and that's exciting.
And this follows on quite nicely, and everyone else, feel free to chime in on this. Do you think short films are being taken more seriously now?
Well, definitely, and they should be. And the thing is, the fact, like, even BirdBox having a platform for short films in festivals and film festivals, they're really recognised. We went into quite a few festivals. We kind of got nominated, and we won. I think Raff got Best Actor for something, and it did really well. And I think even like Apple, and I think Netflix, and everyone's beginning to recognise short films. And I think it's brilliant, because you can go and make something that's really kind of captures your attention for 3 minutes to 20 minutes to 3 hours. So, it's just a different genre of filmmaking, and it should be recognized.
Yeah, and just backing on that, I think with the amount of like great online platforms there are today, and the accessibility of things like Instagram TV and things like that, I think it's really a great time to be able to push short films. And like, for an example, in lockdown last year, I shot a short film with my friends just on an iPhone, and like with the cameras you have on iPhone nowadays, I think, and especially like right now when people maybe can't work or go out, it's a time to really be able to build ideas and build on projects that maybe have been sat on the back burner for a while, because people get caught up in life and everything. But I think hopefully as well, over the next year, 2 years from the pandemic and people being at home and working on ideas, I feel like this could be a really exciting time for film and short films and music and everything.
Yeah. Hopefully there's a whole bottleneck of great stuff to start coming out once we can start doing it properly again.
Oh, sorry.
I hope so.
And the film, sits on BirdBox. And so how did you kind of get Goldfinch's support for the project? For those who are tuning in, Goldfinch is the sort of like the parent company to BirdBox. So how did that relationship work?
I mean, in a way, it was a very kind of like, I felt like it was fate that I started working with Goldfinch. I was actually acting in a film in the south of France called Waiting for Anya, and met the team there. And then I was doing a film, producing a film with for Blonde to Black, which is my company, called Two for Joy, and Goldfinch got involved in that. And then me and Kirsty Bell started talking about collaborating, and with Keith, who's the co-producer. So we ended up sharing offices for a while, and we just had ideas that creatively we could all bring something to the table. Because I think the thing is now, and it's so hard for independent film, and you really need to have, it's all hands on deck, and you need to have the right partners and support each other. And so this was really the first of the first venture for that to happen. And I've also directed something for Goldfinch recently, and seemed like a really good fit. So we're talking about other stuff in the future. Goldfinch have lots going on. We have lots going on in for Blonde to Black. So it just felt like it was like meant to be, really. And they're all great over there, and it's great to have a home for Running Man on BirdBox.
Awesome. I think we're just out of time, and so like we would like to say, thank you for everyone for joining us, and especially to our panel, Sadie, Christiana, Johnny Cooke, Raff Law. Thank you, BirdBox, for bringing us on. And I hope everyone stays safe. If you haven't watched the film, please tune into birdbox.film and watch it. If you have watched it, watch it again. And we'll see you next month for our next film club.
For watching.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.